everyone, in this video we will be sketching piecewise defined functions. The definition for piecewise function is that it's a function that is made up of multiple functions. So this is the notation for piecewise function. So I'm going to explain what do we mean by this notation right here. So if I were to cover this part, this is actually the equation that is making up of this piecewise function. So this is f of x is equal to -6, f of x is equal to -2, f of x is equal to 2, and f of x is equal to 6. After it, these are actually their conditions. So this f is equal to -6. We only consider x greater than -6 and x is less than -3. In this second function here, f of x is equal to -2, and then we only consider x is greater than -3 and x is less than or equal to 0. Now let's have an example to better see how this works. So let's take the first one. So let me cover this. Oh, by the way, before we move on, we also remember here some important information. So in this notation, this is read as x is greater than m and x is less than p. And we also remember that if we get a less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, when there's a bar underneath the inequality sign, we use a solid circle. And when we have a less than or greater than without a bar underneath, we're going to use an open circle. Okay, so I'm going to put this note up here. So we're going to be using that over here in this example that we have. So first thing that we need to do is to graph. Let's take one at a time. So let's take this first part of the function right here. So we can therefore say that f of x is equal to -6. So it's -6. It's going to be over here. F of x is equal to -6 is a horizontal line on y is equal on this y-axis. So that would be a -6 right here. But it says in this condition that we only consider the x that is greater than -6. So if I were to cover this, let's see where is -6 on the x. It's right here. So I will cover that part. And then it says it should be less than or equal to -3. So I would only consider up to, so that's a negative, we're talking about the x-axis here. So -3, -1, -2, -3. So it's right here. So only this portion of the horizontal line will be graphed. And since we have here there's no line underneath, we are going to use an open circle on -6. And since there is a line underneath the -3, which is less than or equal to -3, so it's going to be a solid circle on x is equal to -3. So in this part right here, I'm going to use a closed circle. And in this part right here, I'm going to use an open circle. Now, what do I have to do with the rest of the parts that I draw? I am going to erase them. That means I only stop on this interval. So I'm not going to consider the rest of the parts here. So I will erase all these. So that means I only consider x is greater than -6. but less than -3. So only in between these two circles. Now let's move on to the second one right here. So I'm sure you've seen already the pattern. So that would be -2. So I go -2. I will draw a horizontal line on -2. But then the condition says that I am going to consider only x greater than -3. So x is greater than -3, so it's going to be here. That's x -3. And then the other condition is that it should be less than 0. So that means I cover this part. The x is -3 and x is 0. And it's going to be open circle on -3 and then close circle on 0. And so that means I have to erase all the rest of the parts because I only consider x is greater than -3 and x is less than or equal to 0. So only this part in the middle of these two dots are the ones that are included in this function. Okay, so let's move on to the next one here. So we have f of x is equal to 2. So we draw a line on y equals 2. So it's going to be over here. So it's going to be a horizontal line right here on y is equal to 2. But then the condition says that we are only supposed to consider x is greater than 0. So x is greater than 0. And then x is less than 3. So we only consider this part of the line. But then on 0, it's going to be an open circle. And then on 3, it's going to be a closed circle. So the only ones that we're considering are the ones in the middle of these two circles. All the rest of the parts need to be erased because they're not part of those. They're not part of this equation. Okay, so next one right here, the last one, we have f of x is equal to 6. And then, so then I'm going to draw a line on 6, a horizontal line on 6. So, but then in the condition here, we will only consider from x is greater than 3. So that's x is 3. And then x is less than 6. So only this portion of the whole horizontal line will be considered. And it's going to be an open circle on 3. And it's going to be a closed circle on 6. And so I am going to erase the rest of these parts. So we're only considering the ones that are in between, or the ones that are greater than 3, but less than or equal to 6. So this is the graph of this piecewise function. Okay, so let's have another example here. At this time, I would encourage you to pause this video and try this problem out on your own. And when you're done, unpause it and check your answer. Okay, so we go over the problem here. So pretty much the same thing. So this part right here is the first function of this piecewise function. So let's draw this graph first before we move on to the rest of them. So let's take it one at a time. So let's take the first one here. So which is negative 2/3 x minus 3. So there is another video that talks about how to graph a line. I will put the link of the video in the description box below. So from here, we're going to start on -3, which is the y-intercept. So -3 is right here. And then from here, I go down 2 over 3. So that is 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. So this is the second dot. And so I can draw a line. And this line is that equation over there. So let me fix the line right here. So this is our line. So this line is -2 over 3x minus 3. But then in this line, it says that we will consider only x is less than -3. So I go to the x-axis, I go to -3, I cover the rest, I only consider anything less than -3. So that means I will consider only this part of the line. I covered the rest of them because we are not considering that because those are greater than -3. Since there is no bar underneath the inequality here, this is gonna be an open circle. So that's an open circle on x equals -3. And then that means the rest of these should be erased. That means we don't consider them. They're not considered part of this interval because we only want an x less than -3. So only this part is considered as the interval for this equation right here. Now let's move on to the second piece. So there's like 3 pieces here. So that's why it's called piecewise. So we're gonna look at the second piece. F of x is equal to 3. So that means on y equals 3, we're gonna draw a line on the y axis and on 3. So I'm gonna draw that line over there, horizontal line. Now it says here that the x should be greater than -3. So I go -3 on the x, I cover it. And then the other condition is that it should be less than 5. And so I go to x, x is 5. So it's right there. So only this part of the whole line will be considered because the interval is x is greater than or equal to -3 and x is less than 5. Since there's a bar on -3, I am going to draw a closed circle on -3 and then an open circle on x is equal to 5. So I'm going to draw an open circle there. So this part is the only ones that we consider to be part of the interval. So this part right here in the middle. And so all the rest of the parts will be erased. That means they are not part of the interval. So that is going to be erased here. So, and then we move on to the third piece. So this is the first piece. This is the second piece. And let's move on to the third piece. So which is f of x is equals to 9 over 5x minus 8. So we start on -8. That's the y-intercept. Then I go up 9 over 5. So from -8, I go up 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is over 5. I'm going to draw the line. So this is the line for the third piece. And then we are going to define it based on the interval that is given to us. So this is the line. Okay, so that's the line right there. It goes all the way down here. But the limit is we only consider the ones that are x is greater than or equal to 5. So when x is 5 right here, we only consider anything greater. Anything greater means to the right, because this one, the rest of the parts that I covered are less than 5. So we only want the ones that are greater than 5. Since there's a bar underneath the inequality, we are going to use a closed circle for this. So that's a closed circle, and then it goes to infinity because we want anything greater than 5. So anything to the right of 5 are all considered greater than 5. And so that means this part is not considered to be part of the interval. So this is the graph of this piecewise function. So it's made up of 3 pieces. So the first piece, the second piece, and the third piece. That's why it's called a piecewise function. Let's try the last one right here. At this time, I would encourage you to pause this video and try this problem out on your own. And when you're done, unpause it and check your answer. Okay, so we go over the problem here. So we start with the first piece here. So if I were to cover this, so if I'm going to cover, there's actually 2 pieces here. So this is the first piece and that's the second piece. So if I were to cover the second piece, so we can look at the first piece. So let's graph this. So it says it's f of x is equal to 5 over 2x minus 2. So we start on -2 as the y-intercept. And then I go up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 2. So this is the dot. So then I am going to sketch the line. So this is the line for that first piece right there. So I'm going to go all the way up there and all the way down here. And then I am going to cut this line based on the interval that is given to me on the right side of the equation. It says on the interval that we only consider the x, anything, the value of x should be less than or equal to 2. So less than means it's to the left. So I go to x2, I go to 2 there. I cover the ones that are greater than because I only need the ones that are less than. So that means this part right here are the only ones that we consider to be part of this interval. Anything above 2 would not be considered. So I put a closed circle here because there is a bar underneath the inequality. So that means this part of the line is not part of the interval. So we only consider anything that is less than anything that is x is less than -2. So it's this part right here. Now let's move on to the second piece. So that's the first piece. Now let's move on to the second piece right here. So we have x minus 4 squared plus 3. This is a quadratic equation. So let's find the vertex. There is another video on how to graph quadratic equation. To find the vertex, we're going to switch and keep. So the vertex is positive 4 and 3. So that's the vertex. Switch the sign and then keep the sign. So 4 and 3. So, and then after that, so from here, we go to the vertex 4 and 3. So it's going to be here. That's the vertex. And then to get to the other points, from the vertex, we go right 1, up 1. And then from the vertex, we go right 2, up 4 to get to the other point. So right 1, up 1. So right 1, up 1. And then to get to the next point would be right 2 from the vertex. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's going to be over here and then reflect it across. So this is the other dot and this is the other dot right here. So then I am going to draw the parabola. So this is the shape of the second piece. So I'm going to draw the parabola. It's going to go all the way to infinity. Okay, now we are going to look at the interval that we need to consider. It says here that we only need the x that are greater than 2. So x is 2. I cover on 2. Anything that is to the right of the parabola are the ones that we consider. Anything to the left should be erased. So anything to the left of 2, I'm going to use an open circle for this because again, there's no bar underneath. And then I'm going to erase anything to the left of this parabola because we only need anything to the right of x is 2 or greater than 2. So this is the graph of this piecewise function. Did you get the same graph as this? Good. Perfect. If you found this video helpful, hit like and subscribe for more math videos. See ya!